let's bring Jim Norton in with us, senior citizen of the day
Senior
and
citizen of the
real
day.
estate guru. Morning, Mr. Jim.
Morning, Ron.
So what
Can
are
you
you
hear me
seeing
okay?
out there? What's going on in the real estate world? What's happening on the streets? Anything new in the world of real estate regulation?
Well, everybody is watching this new um, compensation method, okay,
Okay,
because of the fallout of
I
the
gotta
NAR
hit
lawsuit.
you right there, Jim. Gotta hit you there.
Okay.
But because one of the things that you spend a lot of time in the real estate world. I spend a lot of time in the real estate world. And sometimes we forget that there is a world outside of real estate. There's a whole lot of people that have no clue about what these changes are that are coming down because they don't care. It doesn't affect them. So why don't you start
And they
there?
don't. And honestly, Ron, they don't need to be concerned about it because nothing really has changed. It is just the methodology of calculating the compensation. A realtor is still being paid out of the transaction. Okay, it's just a matter of how it's calculated. It doesn't really change anything. It's maybe semantics, whatever you'd like to call it, but it doesn't. People say, "Oh, it's a big difference. It's this." It's not really that big a deal. I think you had Beef Wellington on, and you had asked him, what do you think is going to happen with everything? Nothing. Business is going to continue on as usual. You're going to still, actually, you're going to need a realtor more and more because they've also just made everything a little bit more complex. And if you try to sell something yourself, you have to follow some of those rules, and you don't even know what those are. So it's more of a hoopla. It's a change. Residential realtors are going to be doing business a lot more like the commercial realtors do, and everything will settle out probably by in another month or two. People will get used to it. The strangest thing will be is an open house. You cannot just walk into an open house and ask a question. You have to sign a sort of a non-disclosure, I'll call it, for lack of an easy word, that you have some questions about the house, but you're not represented by a buyer's agent. That'll be the most confusing, but no more confusing than the COVID signature was. And then that went away, of course, but people got used to it fairly quickly.
So the funny thing is, uh, for those that know me, I've got a bad wheel right now, so I don't go and visit too many open houses. But I went just to see a couple of them this past weekend, and I wanted to see how the real estate community is similar, how they're changing, and it's fascinating to me about what's being requested and at the guidance of different real estate brokerages, because everyone's trying to figure
Mhm.
out the new law of the land or the new rule of the land. It's not a law, no matter what anybody
Right.
tells you. A law, if you remember your days, if you're old like Jim and I, we used to watch cartoons on the, maybe we might even have to put Josh into this old conversation here, that there were cartoons every Saturday morning. And we would sit in front of the TV and they might have a bowl of cereal or a cup of coffee if you're the parent and watch cartoons with the kids. And one of the commercials was how a bill becomes a law. And Josh, do they have that anymore? Is that okay? Those commercials are still there. Josh has the little ones. I have little grandkids, but how a bill becomes a law, and they were teaching that it has to go through the legislature, and that's where they write the bills, and it goes in the case of a federal, it goes through the House of Representatives and the Senate all have to agree, and then it goes to the president or the executive branch for a signature, and then it's a law. Well, everything that's being talked about right now in real estate, you hear a lot of people saying, well, the new law is. Well, show me the law. Show me the bill. Show me the executive, either the governor or the president's signature on there. No one could produce that. So it's a
Right. It's
rule that coming out of this club, the National Association of Realtors, the California
right.
Association of Realtors, or whatever your organization is. We're going to continue that conversation with what did I see firsthand over the weekend. Back to our conversation. Jim Norton is with us this morning, real estate expert. And we were chatting before about, so we didn't lay this out really as well as I'd like to. The changes in real estate have to do with how the buyer's agent and seller's agents are compensated. Not the amounts. Nothing's going to change there. It's always been negotiable.
Always negotiable.
Previously, the listing agent would sit down and chat with the seller. They would come up with a figure on what the commission was going to be for the entire transaction. They would negotiate that. Right. Then what would happen is the listing agent would put into the remarks in the multiple listing service and into the contracts what portion he or she was willing to share with a buyer's agent. We've talked about that in the past. I've shared with you that this can be used to enhance the sale price and net sales revenue to the seller if it's used strategically. Again, you see that rsrlinks.com/salesmax. What did the DOJ do in the lawsuit with the National Association of Realtors? What was the settlement? Basically, they said, I digress. I missed one part of that before. When you made an offer on a piece of property as a buyer, you could always put a negotiation in there that you wanted. You didn't care where the change was coming from. So you might say, okay, the property is listed for $1 million. I want to pay $900,000. The seller might say, okay, well, I'll do that, but I'm not going to pay 6% commission. I'll pay 5.5%. All negotiable. Mm-hmm. Everything was negotiable. In real estate, you notice everything is written. You know, and that is a law that a real estate transaction must all be in writing. Could be on the back of a napkin. We've gotten into the point of using the long contracts, but it's all negotiable. What's happened now in this settlement is the buyer's agent and listing agent don't cross as far as the listing agent doesn't share his commission with the buyer's agent, but the seller can still offer a commission to buyer's agents. And I'm not going to get into the weeds with that, but what's morphed out of this is this representation agreement that's become more prevalent for buyers. It's always been there, but it's more prevalent now. Jim, I'm going to tell you that. So you and I were at a meeting last week, and they were talking about the fact that in that brokerage, at an open house, they needed a buyer's representation agreement from everybody that came in. Either they signed it, or they had one, or they weren't able to give them a lot of information.
Right, they're limited on what they could talk about in terms of, again, the wording is if they are questions that engage you as a realtor, then those need to have an agreement. If it's just a question of, is there a bathroom in the upstairs Jack and Jill? Does it have a shower or a tub? That's just factual questions that are pretty much on any flyer. But if it's something where you say, well, is the owner willing to do a note carryback or assistant financiers, then you're acting as a realtor, and that you need an agreement for, a buyer's agreement for.
Okay, so I was at
some form of buyer's agreement. Actually.
I was at a couple of open houses, and there were two different large real estate brokerages, Southern California brokers. They're not national. They weren't the national brands. Mm-hmm. And basically, all they asked for is give us your name and contact information, a regular sign-in sheet, and right. They basically answered almost anything that somebody wanted to know. Pretty interesting.
That if you remember from the meeting, the CAR, California Association of Realtors, has provided a simple version of a buyer's representation. It says that you sign this. It's like a sign-in sheet, and that allows the agent giving the open house to show you and answer a few more detailed questions on that basis. Really doesn't go into any depth of your agreement. It doesn't, obviously it doesn't negotiate any compensation or anything at that point, but it gives you, it basically registers you that you came through on that particular day, and that agent has acknowledged that you are in need of representation.
It's fascinating how this is all going to work out. And again, because it's not a law, and because it's not been taken to any kind of a court, there's a whole lot
Right.
of interpretations out there. And it's just going to be very, very fascinating to watch how this changes over the next 3, 6, 12 months, because there's going to be interpretations and
Correct.
clarifications.
There'll be a lot of interpretations of what you do. The most unfamiliar part of it will be is the the negotiation part, when a buyer's agent calls a seller and says, "I have a buyer. They'd like to make an offer, and here are the basis of it, and here is the requested compensation for their buyer's agent." And that negotiation occurs, but then the seller's agent has to take that back to the seller. Do you see what I'm saying? There's could be 4 or 5 times back and forth just before you get the offer in. And agents, if you're new, you're throwing in the mix of a pretty good serious negotiation really quick.
Well, being that I don't sell real estate, yes, I disclose all the time. I've had a real estate license, and probably for 10 years, give or take. Never used it. I am not qualified to use it. Jim is. He's done these transactions, written the transactions. There's a lot of people like me that, for one reason or another, got a license. I needed it for leading the lending team that was
Right.
governed by the Bureau of Real Estate many years ago. The company that Geneva is not. That's where I lead the lending team now. But it's getting to a point, though, you're going to need somebody that really understands the paperwork. The paperwork is not what it used to be.
Oh,
It's changed dramatically in the last, there's probably been 4 revisions in the last 2 months of
easily. Yeah.
documentation. And you need somebody that's staying on top of this, that's going to a lot of meetings, getting a lot of training to understand these things. It's not your mother or grandmother's real estate world anymore. We're going to continue this conversation with Jim Norton when we come back. Back to Jim Norton talking about real estate. So, Jim, we talked a little bit, or I did, in the last segment about overpricing a property and maybe a changing market. What's your experience with pricing properties? Do you like the idea of going higher to negotiate down, lower to bid up? What's your thoughts?
Oh, I'm in agreement with your chart. A great chart, the one with the pyramid.
Right?
You have to remember, you have no active negotiation with one person. So if you have one person that comes into your open house and you're 30% above market value, you don't have any active negotiation because they're the only one interested. So you pretty much have to listen to what they have to say. And if they're going to come in with a below market value after, talking it up, you don't have anywhere to go. But if you start low and work your way high, you're going to have more interest. More interest is going to give you more chances of being able to bid and work with buyers, to compete for that compete for that house. Now we see a lot of this overpricing occurring right now because of the flippers. They're buying at a pretty high rate, and then they're doing their work on it, and then they're trying to recover their money, and so they're coming out with a high price, and you're seeing a lot of those decrease. But then again, they have limitations because they have loans to repay and profit to make. Makes it really tough. But no, it's
So let's
and
dig
I
into
think
that.
people overestimate the supply and demand side of things. Yes, there's low supply, there's still good demand, but that doesn't drive the whole market.
Let's dig into that because I know, I don't think you're doing it now, but I know in the past you've been a builder. And so you've got a lot of that experience. And there's not a whole lot of difference between, in my opinion, between a builder and a flipper. The flipper starts with in essence, the builder starts with a blank canvas, and the flipper starts with an ugly canvas. So, you're both trying to make it beautiful so it can be sold to maximize the sales price. When you're doing the flipping, where people are going out and buying a property and trying to enhance it for sales purposes, there's a lot of expenses, a lot of risk that goes in there. And what happens if the market changes while you've got an ownership in that property?
You're absolutely correct. I disagree with you on the comparison between the two. A builder is creating value because they're taking something from a raw land state that has a lower value, and they're putting a house on it that has creation of value. That also gives, and they're also in it for a longer term. So they have written in are calculated in the ups and downs of what the market swing can do. A flipper is a quick fix and quick buck. It's just putting lipstick on something to make it look good to see if you can sell it. They're not really fixing the bones of the property. The property is 60 years old. There could be a lot of termite damage. There could be bad plumbing, and they're not redoing the plumbing. They're just putting on fancy new fixtures. That isn't really creating that much value. The problem is it's very costly to do what I just described. And so they're trying to get a profit. And at the same time, they're trying to get a return on the loan investment they made. So I don't know if there's a comparison between the two, but a builder is definitely in a different position.
Interesting. Okay. So, well, yeah, something I see what you're saying. I don't, the concept though is, I mean, right now there's not a lot of raw land to go and build.
That's true.
Do you see many builders?
That's where any government programs don't take into account, especially in California. They always, there's always the idea that they want to build low income housing. We want to build affordable housing. We want to build this. You have to be able to find a piece of land that you can affordably convert to it, whether you're tearing down an old warehouse. If you're looking for raw land, you're moving east and you're getting farther out, away from the job centers. There's a lot of issues mixed into that claim of making it cost effective to build housing. Then, of course, you have the other side of the coin where people say, well, in order to build this, I need to get 30 units on this piece of property, but I'm in the middle of a single family neighborhood. The single family neighborhood doesn't want something that large in next door to them.
Which is a big fight that's going on right now in Anaheim Hills, where they're looking at building two different projects that are 400, 500, 600, 700 units.
Right.
And the community then as a flipper, you don't have to deal with the zoning because it's already there. Builders have to deal with the city backlash.
Right. The builders have to deal with a lot more backlash, the neighborhood backlash, the city itself. But the flipper has it easy. But the flipper also has to be, you have to be logical about it. You have to be, okay, first of all, time is money in a flip. Really, really, you have to be really conscious of time. And then you also have to be conscious of really realistic pricing. And I think some people have gotten into flips they shouldn't have gotten into. When you see that, because you're thinking, wow, you've gone 30% over the market and all you did was paint the place. I don't know if you're going to get your money back. You should have bought better. In fact, in building, you always say it's how you buy the land is how you make your profit. And that's the key. So in a flip, if you're paying too high for your original acquisition, then you're going to have trouble doing your flip on it.
Well, I'm going to say in every business, money is always, always, always made in purchasing.
Yes.
The market will always, even, the shirt I'm wearing, I can't make money on it if I pay $500 and it's a Walmart shirt.
Uh-huh.
If I pay 99 cents for it and I want to sell it for $10, okay, I can make money. So no matter what it is, the market's going to set a price for everything. The market's going to set a price for the house. The market's going to set a price for painting and all that other stuff. So, you know, if you think about this, if the house is not purchased properly, then what happens? Well, the person that's doing the flip may be skimping somewhere. They might be using one coat of paint instead of two. They might be painting over some drywall that is masking a leak of some sort. Those are all things that are happening or could happen there. So just beware that there are a lot of different issues, but we're going to get into that and more when we get Jim back on. We can talk about this further.